Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? If you're a bass player, at some point you're going to have to interact with a sound person, which is great because that means that your bass is going through the PA. You're not relying upon your amplifier to do all the work, to fill up like God knows how big of a space. You're not going to be there wondering is it too boomy or is there enough low end, all that kind of thing, because the PA is going to handle that. And the PA in general is going to have a much better frequency response and better range than even the best, most boutique bass amplifier has. And so it's going to be able to reproduce those really deep lows and really tight lows and the highs and the whole 9 yards and make it very punchy. And it's just always a very good thing. The other thing is, these days, the monitor systems available for a lot of PAs are really, really good. And so if you're lucky, somebody will have a monitor system which can handle the bass guitar, and so you won't need to rely upon your amplifier and stage volume to be the thing that you hear so you can hear the bass and have the other people hear it on stage. This isn't going to happen all the time, but when you get a monitor system like that, if you can get them to put you in the monitors, very often you can turn the amp down even more, because that's one of the things of working with a sound person is to have this line of communication with them, like, am I too loud? Or do you need me to turn my amp up? Or do you need me to make a tone adjustment on my amp? Is something that my amp is doing, is there something my amp is doing that's messing with the tone out there and making it harder for you to control things? It's always important to have that dialogue. I try to get there early as much as possible. Usually say, hey, I'm Ivan, I'm the bass player. I'll say, well, I'm a sound person too, so I get it. And if I have any special requests, I'll ask them then. If I have any questions, I'll ask them then. A couple times I brought two preamps because I wanted to kind of, check them against each other at the gig, and I've asked them, can I give you two lines? And sometimes the answer has been yes, great. And sometimes the answer has been I don't have enough room, which is fine. No problem. Just wanted to ask and then move on. Anyhow, for the most part, they are probably not going to want to mic your amplifier. And that is because the bass guitar in particular is this really dynamic instrument with this really broad frequency range. And the speakers and the amplifiers, they're going to color the sound, sometimes very pleasingly, but it's not going to give them the wide signal that's going to give them the best results in the PA. And because the speakers tend to compress and reduce the frequency response and all that sort of stuff and tend to change it. And it's better off giving them this signal they can work with, and as a raw or purer signal, they can mess around with it. Every once in a while, the albums that you listen to have had a mic put up against a bass amp as well, but most of them are just direct. Anyhow, some guys will, or women will, mic your amp. Not very many. Some of them will do both. I know a couple guys around here that always like to do both, but very often you're going to go direct. So they might use a direct box. It's always good to have one of these around, if you're a bass player. Even if your amp has one, it's just nice to have a backup. And, but generally the sound person will have one or several. And essentially, if you've never used one of these things, well, it's really easy. It's like you treat this input as if it's the input of your amplifier. Anything you want in your signal chain, effects, overdrives, all that kind of stuff, it's got to go before this in order to get to the PA. And then this through, well, that goes to your amp. So usually put this on your amp and put a little teeny cord right into your amplifier. If you want to put this on the ground, you can do that too. And then right here, well, there's the XLR plug, and they can plug a mic cable into that and run it right to the snake, right to the PA. The only other thing these things will have is there's generally a ground lift on these. If there's some kind of buzzing and a ground lift in the system and the buzzing in the PA, they might ask you to push this, or they'll probably run up and push it themselves, see if they can get rid of that. This one also has a 15 dB pad. If you have this really hot instrument, generally, you're never going to touch that. However, more and more, you're never really going to have to use a DI box for the bass because most of our amplifiers have them on. The Mesa has a great one. Actually, all the preamps I have some really great DIs on them. And same basic thing. I always tell them, listen, if you need me to lift the ground, I can lift the ground on this. Just let me know if it's buzzing. Generally, on this one, not all amplifiers have this, but this one has a line level and a mic level switch. You're generally going to want to have it on mic level. There's only been one guy I've run into that wanted line level. Everybody else wants mic level. That's pretty much standard. Most of them are just hardwired that way. And then right here, this source. Do you want it pre-EQ or post-EQ? For the most part, most sound people are going to want it pre-EQ because all these tone knobs on the front of this amplifier here, I may be twiddling those to get my stage sound, and the speakers I'm using on stage are going to have different voicings and characterizations than the PA, which is going to be much more neutral. And it's better for them to give them a signal they can really work with. And, well, but it's my sound, and generally they're going to listen to you and try to recreate your sound. And every once in a while you can send them that signal, but if you're constantly messing with the tone controls, not going to work. The preamps I have, I think the Demeter and the Alembic and the Arkham, I think one of them might have like a pre and post switch. I think for the most part, you get what you get. But the frequency response of their controls isn't quite as great as something like this. Anyhow, that's pretty much how it's going to work and the etiquette involved. I always let them know, just let me know if my amplifier's too loud. Do you want me to do something, tone, and do you need me to lift the ground, that sort of thing. As far as the sound check itself, they're probably going to take the least amount of time on you than on anybody. And that's because bass tends to be pretty easy to sound check. And they're probably going to have you play a little bit and then maybe play with the drums and then stop. And it's always a good idea to just kind of, during sound check, do whatever it is they say so they can, you can help them out to give you the best sound and the band the best sound. Generally, when I'm giving a person a signal, they say, go ahead, play the bass. I'm playing the lower strings, maybe the A, the E, doing some kind of groove, like hitting some stuff on the B if I have a 5. And I'm going to try to maybe goose the bass a little bit. At some point during this, I'm going to give them the hottest signal that I'm going to give them. I'll let them know. I'll try to communicate with them. Or I'll try to do that groove pretty close to it and then maybe hit like a bomb or something in there. Because what they're really doing is they're trying to get a good input level on the bass guitar. And they're trying to figure out where are they going to set their compressors if they have one. If you've got a compressor in your rig, yeah, put it on, to be a little polite and give them something that's a little bit smoother if you can. But they're probably going to have one as well. But they want to see, where's your input game supposed to live? They don't want you to start clipping something, but they don't want you way too low either. And they might try to, slot you in a little bit with the drums, because generally you're going to try to say, okay, play together. And they might try to see where can we get the drums and bass to live together so the kick drum and the bass guitar are interfering with each other. They're going to move on. And so, and there's a soapbox I can jump on for a little bit. As a concert goer, to some of the bigger concerts, I'm always kind of dismayed and surprised that some concerts I go to, the bass guitar is kind of like the odd man out, and it's the instrument. You're like, well, where is it? What's going on? And it's either too muddy or it's been buried in the mix, and the drums are front and center and really awesome, and they're supposed to be. And drums are very hard to mic. They're very hard to figure out how to fit dynamically. So a lot of the work that a sound engineer is going to be doing is going to be focused on those. Focused on making sure the vocals are on top and a good 3-6 dB, probably 6 dB on top of everything else. Because that's what people want. And, when it's done correctly, the bass can kind of live there, and pop. But if they're not doing it correctly, they get this really muddy mix of everything, and everything's really indistinct, and very often the bass is kind of buried. There's no reason for that, is what I'm saying. One of the best mixed concerts and best performed concerts that I've been to in a long time was Bonnie Raitt. And we're going actually again this year. Already got tickets to see her here in Connecticut. And it was phenomenal. And not only were the musicians great and just playing at the exact right thing, and there was plenty of room to breathe on stage from the way they were playing, there was plenty of room for the music to breathe on stage from the way it was mixed. And even though Hutch Hutchinson was, playing this round tone where it wasn't like a Geddy Lee or Marcus Miller in-your-face kind of tone that you would expect to be able to hear, you could hear him loud and clear and distinctly, with that fat tone because of how it was mixed. So, just saying, if you're a sound person, do your job. But that's pretty much it. As a bass player, working with a sound person, that's going to be your experience. That, is what I try to give them. And you always try to be as polite as possible and work with them because it's their job to make you sound good. And, to what to expect. And generally I try to stay out of their way, say, here's what I've got, plug it in, do a little sound check, and be done with it. And, not argue with them unless, there's something that's really, really important. And even then, it's kind of like, hey, can we work with this a little bit? You know what I mean? Anyhow, hopefully that helped some bass player somewhere.